Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dexter Gaming, and a new video on the channel going through my final update for my Lightning Strike Raider character. This isn't going to be a build guide because I can't wholeheartedly recommend a build if you want to try and tackle the league mechanic, but what we'll go through is what I did when I was building a character, what I wanted to get to, what content I wanted to clear, and then we'll go on to what it's actually good at, and maybe the pitfalls of the build. Because of all the tinctures, charms, jewels that you get, it can be very difficult or impossible to find exactly the same stuff. So what I'm going to do is just go through what stats I wanted to hit on the build and how I went about doing that. The idea of this character was to try and get enough DPS and survivability to do the juice league mechanic with loads of different mechanics in, get loads of juice and just go and see if we can get through the content. And in all honesty, without the sextant, where your valve skills don't have cooldown, it's possible, but you die a lot, and there are also enemies that can brick maps for you. Now, I know this is the case in a lot of builds, but I've spent quite a bit of currency on this. I don't know how much, but enough that I would expect it to perform a little bit better than it did. Now, maybe there's fundamental things I could have changed. Apart from the league mechanic, it performs extremely well. I'm doing destructive play at the moment, where I'm absolutely trouncing all the bosses and all the invitations. I don't really have to worry about what I roll on it because we've got very, very good defenses and pretty good offense. But this character, I would think, even without Vile charges up and buffs, is between 8 to 10 million DPS, and it still can't do the league mechanic. Now, this isn't solely down to the damage that it does. The main issue is the nerf is really noticeable to the number of projectiles when you start juicing your maps. When I was doing just Alk and Go, or I was just putting normal league mechanics into the map, getting to 5 projectiles seemed fine. But remember, old Lightning Strike, you could get like up to 10 projectiles without much investment whatsoever, and it made clear really, really good. However, with only 5, it's very, very noticeable because they also have super small hitboxes. So on things like Abyss, Legion, Harbinger, it's very difficult to not get overwhelmed because you don't clear fast enough. I've tried loads of different things to try and get around it, and everything I've tried, it just doesn't quite get up to the standard that I want it to if I'm really going to heavily invest in a character. I've tried the other Lightning Strike gem that has chain, and that's dreadful on a Raider. I think on a Deadeye it might be better, but it gets a lot less damage than the Lightning Strike gem. So what it makes up for possibly in clear, it lacks in raw damage. I've tried going tinctures, all damage can freeze, explode, loads of things. Didn't work even with huge damage because those empowered mobs are very, very difficult to freeze. I was freezing all Conquerors, Guardians, things like that, even in invitations with extra life. But I go into not even a very juiced map and they get empowered by one wisp and I can't freeze. So that didn't work either. I have tried using the adrenaline charms and stacking them so you can get adrenaline as well. Using petrified blood, that worked okay, but still wasn't quite enough in the league mechanic and I still died. However, as I said, if you don't want to juice the league mechanic, it's fine. It can do the league mechanic in normal maps, but I just don't think it's worth it unless you juice and you get very little out of it. And it can do any other Atlas strat that you might want to do, but really, I want the build that can tackle that league mechanic and do it well, and it looks like this character is not quite going to be up for it. I've got a ton of currency though, so we'll go and try a new character. So this is definitely going to be the last video on this character. So the Claw is just big elemental damage, attack speed, crit chance, and Ellie Pen. I settled for Blizzard Crown. I did try Replica Heat Shiver, worked really well. It's definitely more damage, but you kind of need the helmet to maybe get some suppression, life, some chaos res, and I like the fizz damage taken as fire as well. Heat Shiver, you do lose a lot, but you do gain, I think, 10% more damage, but it still wasn't enough to be comfortable in the league mechanic. So with Blizzard Crown, as I say, it's just life, whatever resistances you need to balance, and you're going to need to get suppression somewhere on gear because we're not taking it for our ascendancy. The fun part of the build, and where the build really actually shines, is a combination of Ralakesh's Impatience and Replica Badge of the Brotherhood. So this gives you endurance charges equal to your maximum frenzy charges. Now we're not stacking, we're just normal Raider, so it's 3, 1 from the ascendancy, 3 from the tree, so that's 7. We then get 7 endurance charges and we have 4 power charges. The way Ralakesh's works is you don't actually need the charges. It acts as if you have maximum charges. So you get the buffs from your endurance charges, frenzy charges, the frenzy ascendancy. So this combination on Raider, and I'm sure many other builds, works amazingly well. It means we can get super tanky. We have 7 endurance charges, fortify, lots of reduced physical damage taken, spell suppression, 77% resist, and it's still not enough to survive in the league mechanic. So along with that, I've gone for an armor evasion shield so that I can get additional physical damage reduction. These are quite cheap for a fractured base because no one really runs these sort of shields. So I've just bought a fractured base of like 50C, and then I've spammed fossils for fizz until I hit this. It takes quite a few because there's some rubbish fizz mods on the shield, and the same as the body armor, which we'll come on to in a minute. Rings are just rare rings. You want to get basically accuracy you're going to need, intelligence, and maybe strength, and then just life, resist, whatever you can pack into this with non-channeling skills crafted onto both of them. The body armor cost me way more than it should have. I essentially bought big fractured armor and evasion, wasn't 6-linked, so I had to link it myself. Fusing, super expensive. We've gone +2 max res, so I've had to push this up. I've rolled with dense fossils and jagged fossils because I wanted armor and evasion and fizz damage reduction and resistances. Sorry, I've done too much talking today. My throat is dead. And this cost probably 3 divines in fossils to get because there's loads of rubbish fizz mods, and even with that, I had to get a lucky exalt to get my cold resistance. Would not recommend crafting the chest like that just to get that damage reduction, but it helps. I've never built a lightning strike character this tanky before, and in any other content other than the lead mechanic, you can pretty much AFK. Lead mechanic, different story. The gloves, +2 strike is mandatory, +1 feels bad. In fact, I think you need +3. So I'll go onto my tree and where I think I've made a little bit of a mistake, but you definitely need +2 on your gloves. I've gone attack speed, strength I needed because I was originally running Petrified Blood and that was 155 strength, which I didn't have. I'm not running that anymore, but the strength still comes in handy. Life, resist, and +1 pierce. You can never get enough pierce when you're juicing. And then the belt is just a Stygian Vise with life, resistance, LA damage with attacks. Then I slammed it with the Redeemer Exalt and I hit damage with hits against chilled enemies. It's basically a 1 in 3 to hit it. I've just realised I've got 2 diamond flasks on, which is definitely not necessary. So let's go and actually get the right flask. There we go. That feels a little bit better. So it is Quicksilver Flask with attack speed. I need to roll this to get it better. Jade with evasion, Taste of Hate, and then a diamond flask with crit. Overall, the gear was expensive to craft. The boots are like 2 to 3 divines. The claw will be expensive. So overall, I would think the build gear-wise is probably like 20 to 25 divines. Maybe not quite that, but it's very difficult to know crafting costs. So gem links, we've settled on Vile Lightning Strike, Nightblade, Trinity, Volatility, Inspiration, and Awakened Added Lightning. I did want to fit multi-strike in, but the way I play it, multi-strike doesn't work for me because I never released a move only button. So you always have the 3 hits and it just feels a bit janky. Also, I couldn't really figure out what gem to drop. Realistically, it'd have to be Volatility, and that's so good for Trinity because we stack so much lightning damage on this build. We have 500 to 40k lightning damage, and we only have up to 4,500 fire and 3,500 cold. Volatility just makes sure that cold and fire overlap enough that Trinity's always up. The claw, I've just got Ancestral Protector, Whirling Blades. In the shield, I have Precision, Enlighten, and a level 1 Vitality. The Vitality isn't needed for anything, but we take a Mastery that gives us damage per aura, so it's a tiny bit of extra damage. And the Precision needs an Enlighten, as you can see, because we've got 14 mana. The reason being is we are wedging in Grace, Haste, and Wrath. Again, another Enlighten 3. So we've got our Speed Aura, Damage Aura, and our Defensive Aura. In the gloves, we've got our Assassin's Mark, Mark on Hit, Life Tap, and then just a Flame Dash. And then in the boots, I have a Life Tap, Increased Duration, and Steel Skin, and then just a Portal Gem. There's tons of different setups you can do for Lightning Strike. This is what I went for. As I say, it feels really, really good in everything but super juice maps because 5 projectiles that don't chain, even though the pierce just isn't enough because the hitboxes are very small on them. I think this league and the league mechanic, if you're going to do anything like a hit-based thing where you might strike 2 additional targets is not enough. You either need Chain Explodes or you need a massive AoE skill because you get overwhelmed by not only mobs but insanely powerful mobs, and it's very easy to get caught out. Stun is also a massive problem, so becoming stun immune is really, really important. I'll go through the options for that in a minute. So in terms of the tree, I'm not going to go through the whole tree. It's just a melee raider tree. I'll just go through the bits that might be slightly different. So I'm taking a Thread of Hope here because I didn't want these small attack speed nodes. However, it means I can't take the Mastery for +1 strike. Ever since I've added that Thread of Hope in, even though I've got more damage, the build feels worse because clear is worse because of that. It also means I can drop these small nodes here. Ideally, I want to drop these 2, but I don't have the suppression to do it. So we got one with nature and quick step that we can pick up. We could also, if we had a point, pick up perfectionist for movement speed. I don't think this is needed. I think I could probably drop points somewhere, spec into here, and just go up here if I needed to. But I didn't know what to drop on the tree. Oh, and primeval force you can pick up as well, which is a nice node. The reason I needed the points is because I wanted to fit Wrath in because I felt my damage was slightly lacking. So I've gone for 2 reservation cluster jewels. We've gone 1 for frantic aspect, which is haste. And then we had to go 3 passive for grace, also with increased effect, but it wasn't expensive. It was less than a divine. And then linked into that, we have a large cluster with overshock and sadist. So overshock, more lightning damage, more ailments. You easily hit 50% shock on the build. And then sadist gives us essentially 50% increased damage, or 60%. I can't count. Here we should have the same jewel, but I'm running a corrosive elements and overshock. You want just exactly the same jewel here. And then we've got a medium with pressure points and basics of pain, just to make sure we're capping crit or close to it. And then we've got this small cluster sat in there. There's also some unique jewels. Because we've dropped this part of the ascendancy, we need to get ailment immune, and we can't get on the boots because we're running Ralakesh. So we have Ancestral Vision. So simple, easily solves our issues for ailment avoidance. And then in here, I've got a Watcher's Eye with phasing while affected by haste and attack damage by precision. The haste one is needed because I'm slightly short on my ailment immunity, and on your charms or your jewel, you have X amount chance to avoid early ailments while affected by haste, and I needed that just to top up that last bit. And then lastly, somewhere, here we go, we've got that which was taken. This was 7 divines, and God knows if you can find the same jewel. We've got melee hits can fortify, so that sorts our fortification out. Extra elemental resistances, because I was very tight. Chance to avoid early ailments, and a very, very nice 5% chaos resistance per endurance charge, and we have 7. So that's 35% chaos res from this jewel, 16% res, fortify, and 22% early ailments. Pretty insane for 1 jewel socket. The Lethal Pride is 2 double damage and intimidate. Wasn't actually that expensive because they don't cost a lot in this area of the tree, because not many people put their Lethal Pride there. They'll stick it in here. So let's go over the charms, and then I'll go through how I wanted to build the character and what I was aiming for. So the first charm I've gone for, because I don't cap crit, is as high a crit chance while at maximum power charges as I can. Again, because of Ralakesh's, we're always counted at maximum. And then this little bit of chance to avoid early ailments while phasing to help me get capped. So I get 50 from the jewel, 20 from the tree. I need to find 30. You can only roll 25 on these, which is why I've got them on this jewel here as well. And then we've got spell suppression, because I wasn't capped again, because we're not taking that ascendancy. I needed a tiny bit of suppression, and that goes along with crit chance and crit multi. And then the last jewel I've got is critical strikes have culling strikes, big DPS increase, and you take no extra damage from crits while elusive. This was again a way to try and survive the league mechanic, because one of the juice that you get gives enemies loads and loads of increased crit. I'm always elusive, so it means basically I can't get crit. Didn't work, still died. What I would run instead of this in a normal situation is cannot be stunned while you have fortify instead of the extra damage from crits, because nothing outside of those league mechanic monsters have been close to killing me, so it shouldn't matter whether I take a crit or not. So I could probably run either or. So in terms of what I wanted to achieve on the build in terms of defenses, I wanted as much flat, reduced physical damage taken as I could, which comes from my body armor and my shield. I wanted as much Fizz as Ellie as I could, which is body armor and helmet. I wanted fortify, which comes from this jewel here. And then along with this amulet increases those stats to 27. And that's 27%, I think, reduced damage taken. Endurance charges give you flat, reduced physical damage taken as well. So we very rarely take anything from physical hits. I've also added to my elemental resistances because we've got a lot of Fizz, or a little bit of Fizz going to Ellie. Wanted capped chaos res, wanted capped spell suppression, wanted ailment avoidance, wanted damage so I can just blitz through bosses and stuff. And I've got all of that. If this was last league, this build would be amazing, but it's not. It's a league where the mechanic is super, super difficult, and maybe I shouldn't target every build I make to do it, but it's only going to be around this league. So the next build I pick is going to have to be a powerhouse. So that kind of covers off the build. I know it's been a bit of a rushed video. I don't know if people read my community post, but I made an hour-long video guide for the build. and then realized my mic wasn't on at the very end. However, now I've played it more, I don't think I want to do a build guide because I don't recommend people play it for the money that it costs. Yes, it's fun, and if you're a lightning strike enthusiast, go for it, but don't expect to do Juice League mechanic. And I think that's kind of it for the video. I've already taken longer than I wanted to on it, since I'm basically saying don't play it. There is one option left that I may try, but it involves finding lots of damage somewhere, and that's giving up a gem to get Awakened Ancestral Call. So we'll bring up Awakened Ancestral Call, and this targets 3 additional enemies, and you get a slight increased damage. The quality gives you targeting skills from far away, which doesn't really do much for lightning strike since it hits from a long way away anyway. But this would give me, if I then took the node back on the tree, 6 additional strikes. That's essentially 3 times the clear speed that I've already got. I think this would solve those issues, but how you make up the damage from dropping something that's either going to be inspiration or even volatility. And I think the way you fit this in is you drop the Nightblade elusive setup entirely, but you are going to have to find 20% raw damage from somewhere to make up for the fact that you're not really getting much damage from this gem. This is something I am considering because I've run this in the past and it feels amazing, but we didn't have this Juice League mechanic then. So I may revisit this character at some point and see if there's a way to eke more damage out. So it might be we do go Replica Heat Shiver. We maybe try and get some big rare jewels. Maybe go back to the Suppression Almond Ascendancy so that we can free up more stuff. Lots of different things to think about, but this is really the only other option I can think of on a raider to get this working. So that's it for the video. Hope it helped some people out and maybe answered some questions. Feel free to leave any questions you've got in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you on the next build.